True Crime Fix is a podcast with adult themes and graphic descriptions of crime which may not be considered suitable for all ages. Please use your discretion when listening. All research has been conducted using material in the public domain, and some opinions may not be that of the author or the host. Please remember that all victims are someone's loved one, and all episodes are recorded in the utmost respect of their memory.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the True Crime Fix podcast with Stevie B.
In a missing persons case, sometimes the press can be a help, and sometimes it is a hindrance. In this case, definitely, the UK press had made up their mind who the criminal was, and someone's life had been changed forever. Unfortunately, this made things harder for the grieving family, as the missing person became a side story to the controversy. This is your True Crime Fix. I'm your host, Steve, and this case has been written in dedication to the memory of Joanna Yeates. Joanna Claire Yeates was born on the 19th of April 1985 to David and Teresa Yeates in Hampshire, England. She was privately educated at Embley Park, which was a former 17th century stately home, which was converted into a school in the 19th century, and it is near to the town of Romsey in Hampshire. Joanna studied for her A-levels at Peter Symonds College, which is in Winchester. Joanna then graduated with a degree in landscape architecture from Writtle College, which is in Chelmsford, Essex. She received her postgraduate diploma in landscape architecture from the University of Gloucester. In December 2008, Joanna met then 25-year-old architect Greg Reardon at the firm Highland Edgar Driver in Winchester. The couple moved in together in 2009 and settled in Bristol when the company had moved there. Joanna later changed jobs to work at the Building Design Partnership in Bristol. Joanna and Greg moved into a flat at 44 Carnegie Road in the city's Clifton suburb in October 2010. The property at 44 Carnegie Road used to belong to the nearby Clifton College, who had converted it into flats for the use of teaching staff. When the school decided to sell the property in 1990, the college offered it first to its members of staff. Christopher Jeffries, head of the school's English department, bought 3 flats with the money he had inherited from his mother. Mr. Jeffries taught English at Clifton College from 1967 until 2001 when he retired. 1 flat was occupied by himself, 1 was occupied by Joanna and Greg, and the final one was occupied by a Dutch couple, Vincent Tabak and Tanya Mawson. On Friday the 17th of December 2010, Joanna Yeates and Greg Reardon set off for work through the snow. They had lunch together at the Hope and Anchor pub on Jacob Wells Road in the Clifton area of Bristol. Her lunch had included cheesy chips and cola. Greg kissed her goodbye in the lobby of the office where they both worked. His plan was to drive to Sheffield to visit his half-brother Francis and his wife Helen. Whilst there, he planned to go skiing as there was ideal weather conditions in the Peak District due to the heavy snowfall in the region. The main aim of the visit, however, was to attend the christening of the couple's 3-month-old twins, Beth and Alice. Greg Reardon returned home from work and he loaded his things for the weekend into the car that he shared with Joanna, a Ford Ka. He left the light switched on in the flat for Joanna before locking the door behind him. When he tried to leave, however, he found out that he could not start the car as its battery was flat. Greg Reardon returned to the house and asked landlord Christopher Jeffries for help with starting the car, but as the landlord did not have any jump leads of his own, he went with Greg and knocked on the door of their neighbour Vincent Tabak. Unfortunately, they had no success, so they sought out a neighbour in the next house, engineer Peter Stanley. Mr. Stanley came out and helped to get the car started, using one of the landlord's car's batteries to start Greg's car. Greg Reardon had driven off to Sheffield just before 7 p.m. Joanna Yeates had spent the evening of the 17th of December with colleagues at the Bristol Ram pub on Park Street. She had left the pub at around 8 p.m. to begin the 30-minute walk home. She told friends and colleagues that she was not looking forward to spending the weekend alone, as it would be her first nights in the flat without Greg. She planned to spend her time baking in preparation for a party the couple would be throwing the following week, and shopping for Christmas. Joanna was seen on CCTV at around 8:10 p.m. leaving a Waitrose supermarket without purchasing anything. She phoned her best friend Rebecca Scott at 8:30 p.m. to arrange a meeting on Christmas Eve. The last known footage of Joanna recorded her in a branch of Tesco Express supermarket buying a pizza at around 8:40 p.m. She had also brought 2 small bottles of cider at a nearby off-licence Bargain Booze. This is the last that anybody sees of her. Upon arriving in Sheffield, Greg had tried in vain to call Joanna on the phone line in the flat. So he texted her at 10:30 p.m. Made it okay. Good traffic. Car wouldn't start. Had to get neighbour to start it. Okay now. Did you have a good time at the pub? There was no reply. During his weekend away, Greg tried to ring Joanna numerous times and sent her a number of text messages, but she did not respond. Greg would later say, "I tried to contact her twice on the Saturday, at lunchtime and again in the evening. On Sunday, I rang her in the day and on the way home. I was worried, but didn't really think there was a problem. I thought she might have gone away and was busy doing fun things, and was not able to get hold of her phone." At approximately 8 p.m. on Sunday the 19th of December, Greg returned home to find Joanna again not there. While waiting for Joanna's return, Greg noticed that their cat Bernard appeared to have been neglected. Greg said, "When I was settling down to have some food, Bernard was particularly affectionate. He seemed hungry. When I went back to the car and came in again, I noticed the litter tray was full. I realised the feces in the top of the litter tray were very old and dried out on the top." Greg and Joanna had agreed to watch the finale of the BBC reality show The Apprentice together at 9 p.m, and when she had still not arrived at 8:55, Greg called her again. But her mobile phone rang in the flat from a pocket in her coat. Thinking she may have gone out to get something, Greg had a quick tidy up around the flat. When doing so, he found that her purse and keys were also still in the flat. Now extremely worried, over the next 3 hours, Greg attempted to call Joanna's friends to see if he could locate her, but all of these attempts were in vain. At 12:36 a.m. on Monday the 20th of December, he telephoned Joanna's parents, who lived in Ampfield, Hampshire, which is 8 miles north of Southampton, and told them that Joanna was missing. They told him to contact the police and said they would drive to Clifton straight away. It took them 2 hours. Greg Reardon telephoned the police at 12:45 a.m. He explained that his girlfriend was missing. He told the operator, "I've been away for the weekend and I have come back and found my girlfriend not here when she is supposed to be. All of her important stuff is in the flat, her wallet, her keys and her phone. I'm worried if she's missing or she might be in hospital somewhere. I'm quite worried. I've called everyone I know in the area. I said to her on Friday that I would be back on Sunday evening. I have been trying to ring her." WPC Jackson was the first officer on the scene and took the initial missing persons report. After contacting local hospitals, WPC Jackson returned with an unidentified colleague at about 4 a.m. to interview Greg and Joanna's parents, who had arrived from Hampshire. At approximately 4:15 a.m, the two officers, with Greg, knocked on the doors of the neighbouring flats to see if they could get any ideas as to Joanna's whereabouts. None of the neighbours reported seeing her. The police gave the search for Joanna the name Operation Braid, and by Tuesday the 21st of December, the search for Joanna had been picked up by all major UK media outlets. During that day, police had also searched the area around Avon Gorge, while Joanna's parents, Teresa and David, made a television appeal for her to come home. On the Tuesday evening, Christopher Jeffries, who had been interviewed by detectives earlier in the day, telephoned the police to say that he had remembered seeing and hearing someone who he believed to be Joanna together with two other people at 44 Carnegie Road. On Wednesday the 22nd of December, Greg left Bristol and went to Joanna's parents' house in Ampfield. Meanwhile, specialist officers had searched the couple's flats as well as the snowy Bristol Downs and the Avon Gorge. Police also took a phone and laptop computer from Greg as part of the inquiry. From Joanna's parents' home, Greg spoke of the distress of his girlfriend being missing. He told the Daily Mail, "On Sunday night I came home at about 8 p.m. after staying with my family in Sheffield, but Jo wasn't home. Over the weekend I tried calling and texting her and didn't have a reply, but Jo didn't always reply, so it wasn't completely out of character. Then when I arrived home, it was obvious that our cat had been left on his own and he was going mad. I waited up for her until about midnight, and then when she didn't return, I started to get really worried. I went through her bag, which she had left on the table, and found it had all the stuff she would need to take with her, things like her purse and her keys. I called the police and reported her missing, and also phoned her parents. Since then, I haven't slept much. I am constantly on the internet, trying to raise awareness on Facebook, and some of her friends from Hampshire have even come up to Bristol to put up missing person posters. She was the first ever girlfriend I moved in with. Recently, we moved to a really nice flat together in probably the best area of Bristol. It's our second place together, and things felt like they were really finally falling into place. We were both really happy in our jobs. We worked together, and that's how we met. We've had our cat Bernard for about a year since he was a kitten, and he means the world to us. Things were set for us. We were going to stay at her parents' for about a week over Christmas, then head up to Scotland for Hogmanay. She was really looking forward to Christmas. We had put up a tree, and she was due to bake some mince pies. We celebrated our second anniversary on December the 11th, and I took her out for dinner. It was perfect. On the 23rd of December, Joanna's parents revealed that they feared that she'd been abducted during another press conference. Police said in the same talk with the media, a missing pizza she had brought shortly before she had disappeared could be a vital clue. The receipt for it was found inside her flat, but there was no sign of the pizza itself or its packaging. On Christmas Day at 9 a.m, Daniel Birch and his wife Rebecca had been walking their chocolate-coloured Labrador, Roxy, when they made a gruesome discovery on Longwood Lane. Describing the events, Mr. Birch said, "I saw a lump in the snow on the left-hand verge, and I thought I saw what appeared to be a pocket of a pair of denim jeans. I did not think about it straight away and carried on walking. After about 10 paces, my mind was saying, that was a body. I handed the dog to my wife Rebecca. I remember saying to her, that was a body back there, and walked back to the lump in the snow. I could see the form of a human body covered in snow. It was laying on its side, facing the wall, parallel to the road." He added, "Although the body was almost covered in snow, there was a small section which was not covered. I could see what appeared to be a rear jeans pocket. Also, riding up above the top edge, what appeared to be white-coloured knickers, and that made me think it was female. The body was next to the quarry and between 2 golf courses, 3 miles from Joanna's flat in Bristol. Police officers were called and commenced a fingertip search of the area around the verge at Longwood Lane. The victim's jeans were fastened, but her pink top was partially pulled up over her head. She was still wearing her bra, but her right breast was exposed. Avon and Somerset Police Forensic Coordinator Andrew Mott was among the first to be called out to the scene on the 25th of December. He said the snow was undisturbed around the body, and there was apparent blood staining on a wall. He stated that he tried to prevent the body from thawing out and explained that care was taken to minimise any disruption to potential evidence as her body was lifted. 2 yellow webbing straps were fed under her calves and lower back, using a broom handle to get them underneath. She was then lifted by one officer, supported by a second behind him, and placed onto an open white body bag on top of an orange stretcher by the roadside. From there, she was taken a couple of miles to the public mortuary at Flaxbourton, where Dr. Delaney began his initial post-mortem at 6 p.m. News that a body had been found was released straight away, and subsequently confirmed by Chief Superintendent John Stratford, but its identity would not be released until Boxing Day. On Boxing Day, police said that they were satisfied that the body of the woman was that of Joanna Yeates. The body's frozen condition, however, meant the results of the post-mortem examination was going to take some time. The post-mortem was eventually conducted on the 28th of December, and it was discovered that Joanna had been strangled. Post-mortem tests revealed she had suffered 43 separate injuries. These included cuts and bruises and a fractured nose. It also suggested her death was slow and painful. A full-scale manhunt was started to find Joanna's killer. On December the 30th, a little after 7 a.m, Christopher Jeffries heard a knock at the door of his flat and a voice saying, "It's the police, Mr. Jeffries. We need your help." He let them in and was immediately arrested on suspicion of murder. Apparently, when interviewing Joanna's neighbour, Vincent Tabak, he had informed police that he had seen Mr. Jeffries' Volvo change directions in the parking bay between the time he had gone to bed on the 17th of December and the morning of the 18th of December, indicating that the landlord had gone out. Vincent Tabak and Tanya Mawson had also reported to the police that they had seen Christopher Jeffries spying through windows and letting himself in with his own keys to apartment 1 where Joanna and Greg lived. He was questioned for 3 days and then released on police bail, an indication that he remained under suspicion. And this is where his trial by media began. Mr. Jeffries was not perceived very well by the British media due to his appearance and old-school demeanour. The tabloid press portrayed him as a sexually perverted voyeur who used teaching as a means of feeding his perversions. In an article in the Financial Times by Brian Cathcart on October the 8th, 2011, the behaviour of the British media during this time of his arrest was summarised. So as not to misquote, I will read you the passage of the article in full. I quote, "Several of the newspapers on Thursday morning, their stories were written before his arrest, but reaching their readers after it, painted him in an unmistakably sinister light. The Daily Mail, for example, had a front-page photo beside the headline, 'Could this man hold the key to Joanna's murder?' Since, as her landlord, Jeffries naturally had a set of keys to the basement flat she shared with her boyfriend, Greg Reardon. The hint was a heavy one. It was not until Friday that the press really let rip. The front page of The Sun showed a small photograph of Joanna Yeates next to a cutout from a school lineup showing Jeffries 30 years ago with very blue hair and grinning. The headline was, 'The Strange Mr. Jeffries, kid's nickname for ex-teacher suspect.' Page 4 took things much further. It was dominated by 4 words, each accompanied by an explanatory phrase. Thus, weird, strange talk, strange walk. Posh, loved culture, poetry. Lewd, made sexual remarks. Creepy, loner with blue rinse hair. The report began. Joanna Yeates' murder suspect, Chris Jeffries, was last night branded a creepy oddball by ex-pupils, a teaching colleague, and neighbours. It went on to assert that he had a ferocious temper and threw things in the classroom, and that he had invited pupils to his home and habitually made sexual remarks. He was also unkempt and dirty, a loner, domineering, and generally believed to be a homosexual. The evidence for this came largely from unnamed sources, although a former teaching colleague, Richard Bland, was quoted using the word loner and referring to his blue-tinged hair. Bland also said that Christopher Jeffries was a dedicated and successful teacher, though this was not given prominence. The Daily Mirror had its own line: "Joe Suspect is a peeping Tom." Beside that were 3 more lines: "Arrest landlord spied on flat couple." "Friend in jail for paedophile crimes." And "Cops now probe 36-year-old murder." Side note, during the interview with Jeffries, his solicitor had been informed that the police were investigating links to a Bristol cold case which had a similar MO to the murder of Joanna. On the inside pages, Jeffries was a nutty professor with a bizarre past who was arrogant, rude and a snob, had a ferocious temper and peered through his tenants' windows. The paper also reported that his eccentric manner and long-term bachelor status sparked unfounded school gossip that he was gay. The other papers had made their own variations. The Mail, the teacher they call Mr. Strange, reported that Jeffries idolised Christina Rossetti, who was described as many as a mentally ill romantic poet who often wrote about death and was prone to apocalyptic visions. The Daily Star announced Joe Landlord, a creep who freaked out schoolgirls, and Angry Weirdo had a foul temper. The Daily Express quoted an unnamed former pupil saying he constantly made lewd remarks to his students. All allowed generous space for photographs, many serving to reveal the contrast between the youthful pretty murder victim and the wide-eyed and windswept suspect. The Mirror blew up one picture to show that Jeffries had an A to Z of Bristol in his car, adding the caption, "Evidence, maps were on the back seat." It would have been very difficult, seeing this coverage, to avoid the conclusion, or at least the strong suspicion, that Christopher Jeffries had killed Joanna Yeates. He was, or so it was suggested, volatile, morbid, sexually repressed, and unfettered by social norms. Furthermore, he knew his tenants' movements and had access to Joanna Yeates' flat. This hostile evidence was founded almost entirely on unnamed witnesses, with some of the most contentious quotations reproduced in several papers. A careful reader who relied only on quotes from people who were identified by name would probably have seen a very different picture. A former tenant, Wendy Nichols, a friend, Oliver Cullen, his former headmaster at Clifton College, Stuart Andrews, and a neighbour, Ray Lohman, even the former teacher who spoke of Jeffries as a loner, Richard Bland. They described in various papers, though usually towards the end of the articles, a man who was a dedicated teacher, a responsible landlord, and an active member of his community. Several expressed amazement at his arrest, or downright disbelief at the idea of him killing anyone. Put these together with some readily available facts, and it would have been possible to flip the picture entirely. This man had taught for 34 years in a well-known local independent school, Clifton College, without even a blemish on his record. He was involved in the Neighbourhood Watch, the Liberal Democrat Party, and a number of conservation campaigns. He had a large circle of friends, owned a handful of properties, and was studying for a degree in French at the University of the West of England. As Lohman put it, he was a pillar of society. But the editors did not give prominence to that interpretation. After seeing the papers that Friday, a solicitor wrote to several editors warning them in strong terms to stop publishing defamatory material. On the same day, the Attorney General, Dominic Grieve, publicly reminded editors that the Contempt of Court Act forbids the publication of materials relating to an arrested person that was likely to prejudice a future jury against them. Yet the next day's coverage was again extremely hostile to Christopher Jeffries. Saturday's Sun, for example, led the front page with the headlines "Obsessed by Death" and "Joe Suspect Scared Kids." The substance of this revelation was that he had shown some students the 1955 Alain Renaissance Holocaust documentary Night and Fog, and that he had taught students the Victorian murder novel The Moonstone. Inside was an interview with an unnamed blonde woman who alleged that Jeffries had approached her several times in Bristol, and that when she rebuffed him, he responded with a question used in the headline: "What, do you think I'm a pervert?" In a short article alongside, two named former tenants of Jeffries were quoted saying that he had let themselves into their flat, though they did not suggest that there was anything sinister about this. The Mirror, meanwhile, asked, "Was Killer waiting in Joe's flat?" and kept its focus on the landlord and keyholder Jeffries, who was, again, a nutty professor, a show-off, dirty and eccentric. The Mail had a tale about him leaving his dying mother's bedside, while the Daily Star recycled the Rossetti angle and declared that Jeffries had been known to pupils as Wizard. That Saturday evening, however, after 3 days and 2 nights in custody, Jeffries was released, and at the same time Joanna Yeates' partner, Greg Reardon, issued a statement, a personal tribute to the murdered woman. It also included the following forthright passage: "Joe's life was cut short tragically, but the finger-pointing and character assassination by social and news media of an as yet innocent man has been shameful. It has made me lose a lot of faith in the morality of the British press and those that spend their time fixed to the internet in this modern age. I hope in the future they will show more of a sensitive and impartial view to those involved in such heartbreaking events, and especially in the lead up to a potentially high-profile court case." With these events, the steam went out of the Jeffries story, although there was still just enough left to justify the Sunday Mirror pointing out that he had taught pupils Oscar Wilde's The Ballad of Reading Gaol, which it described as the story of a man hanged for cutting his wife's throat, while the Mail on Sunday noted that he had shown them Deborah Kerr's film The Innocents, a spooky tale by 1961 standards, although today rated suitable for 12-year-olds. By Monday the 3rd of January 2011 though, and after being lambasted for the weekend, there was little interest in the retired teacher. Subsequently, Christopher Jeffries said that my identity has been violated, my privacy has been intruded upon, my life, I don't think it would be too strong a word to say that a kind of rape had taken place. End quote. It's fair to consider Mr. Jeffries' reputation was collateral damage, something which was commonplace with the regulations which were in place at that time. On Monday the 3rd of January 2011, the police appealed for information about a light-coloured 4x4 vehicle which had been seen in the area where Joanna's body was found. Detective Chief Inspector Phil Jones reported there was no indication from the post-mortem that she'd been sexually assaulted. He added that he was unable to speculate as to whether she let somebody into her flat, whether somebody was already there, or whether somebody broke in. On Tuesday the 4th of January, the police launched a campaign on Facebook to find Joanna's killer. An advert on the social networking site allowed people with information to contact the incident room online instead of calling in. On Wednesday the 5th of January, detectives had said Joanna's body was missing one grey ski sock when she was found, and were keeping an open mind about whether she was strangled with it or whether it had been kept as a trophy by her killer or killers. The police banned ITV journalists from the press conference at which the appeal was made. Avon and Somerset Police said that they had made a complaint to the broadcast regulator Ofcom about a naive, unfair and irresponsible ITV news report criticising the Yeates investigation. ITV News said it stood by its story, and the force later overturned a press conference ban, but warned it would adopt similar tactics if the media hampered its investigation. On Tuesday the 18th of January, the final steps of Joanna were reconstructed for the BBC's Crime Watch programme in a bid to find her killer. Avon and Somerset Police said tests concluded she had not eaten the pizza she bought from the Tesco's Express store on the 17th of December. 2 days after the Crime Watch appeal was filmed, the police got their breakthrough. They had become increasingly suspicious as to why Vincent Tabak had fed them misleading information about Christopher Jeffries. Tabak had told police that on the night of Joanna's disappearance, Jeffries' car had been moved. This turned out to be a lie, but the information had prompted Jeffries' arrest. On the 20th of January, 32-year-old Tabak was himself arrested in his native Netherlands and returned to the United Kingdom. During his arrest, he refused to cooperate with the police and largely answered questions with no comment. However, The evidence against him was mounting. He could not argue the DNA proof which linked him to Joanna's death, and I'll say more on that later. 3 days later, he was charged with her murder. On the 24th of January, Vincent Tabak appeared before Bristol Magistrates Court. During the 3-minute hearing, Tabak spoke only to confirm his name and date of birth. No plea was entered, and he was remanded to custody. On the 25th of January, Tabak appeared before Bristol Crown Court. His lawyers declined to make a bail application. On the 31st of January, Tabak appeared at Bristol Crown Court again via video link, this time from Her Majesty's Prison at Long Lartin in Worcestershire. Again, no application was made for bail, and he was remanded to appear before the same court on the 4th of May. It emerged that Joanna's body was released to her family by the coroner on the 28th of January 2011. They would finally be able to lay her to rest. So what is known about the accused perpetrator? Vincent Tabak was born in Veghel on the 10th of February 1978, youngest child of Sonia and Gerald. He was brought up in the nearby small town of Uden near Eindhoven in the Netherlands. He has 3 sisters and a brother. At the age of 18, Vincent Tabak began studying at the Faculty of Architecture, Building and Planning at Eindhoven University of Technology, and he graduated in 2003 with his Master of Science degree. He left university in the summer of 2007. Even before his doctoral thesis was complete, he was headhunted in September 2007 to work at the Bath headquarters of the global architectural consultant firm Burrell Happold, where he worked as a people flow analyst, examining how people moved around at hospitals, offices, schools, airports and sports stadiums. He met his girlfriend Tanya Mawson in 2008 through the Guardian's dating site Soulmates. They moved in together in the larger ground floor flat at 44 Carnegie Road in June 2009. While he was at work on Friday the 17th of December 2010, Vincent Tabak was modelling the movements of pilgrims in and around the Great Mosque in Mecca. His girlfriend Tanya Mawson went off with her colleagues after work to a Christmas party for Dyson staff where she worked, and she left her car at home. She would be there until after midnight. After his day at work, Vincent Tabak left his office in Bath at 6:15 p.m. and took the train to Bristol Temple Meads, where he arrived at 6:40 p.m. He cycled home to 44 Carnegie Road, and the prospect of an evening on his own. It did not turn out that way. The murder trial began on Monday the 10th of October 2011 in Court 1 at Bristol Crown Court. The hearing was presided over by the judge, Justice Field. The jury consisted of 6 men and 6 women. The killing happened after Joanna made a flirty comment, Tabak claimed at the trial. We were standing close to each other. She invited me in for a drink. She made a flirty comment. I thought she was flirtatious, he said. But when he went to kiss her, she screamed, and Tabak claimed he held his hand over her mouth and around her neck in an attempt to silence her. The prosecution claimed that Joanna would have been in pain and resisted him, but Tabak denied this was the case and told the court there was no struggle. He also denied that he had become sexually aroused as he attempted to kiss her, but did admit that he was attracted to her on that night. When he was asked to show the court Joanna's beckoning motion, Tabak made a waving motion which looked like an innocent hello gesture. The court also heard that Tabak ate the pizza the police had been looking for on the night he killed Joanna. After she died, Tabak texted his girlfriend Tanya Mawson to say he was bored and drove to a nearby Asda supermarket to buy crisps and beer while Joanna's body was still in the boot of the car. He left her body on the verge of Longwood Lane near Bristol, where she was found on Christmas Day. Bloodstains were found on the wall close to where Joanna's body was discovered, suggesting Tabak had tried to lift her over the wall and into the quarry. Having failed to do that, Tabak covered her body with leaves. Traces of DNA matching Tabak's was found on Joanna's breast and on her jeans underneath the knees, indicating he probably held her by her legs as he carried the body. Traces of Joanna's blood was discovered in the boot of Tabak's car, the court heard. Fibres found on Joanna's body indicated she had come into contact with Tabak's black coat and the silver Renault Megane that belonged to Tanya. 19 days after his arrest, while in prison, Tabak told a chaplain, "I've got something to tell you. It will shock you." He confessed that he had killed Joanna and said he was sorry. The jury found Tabak guilty by a majority decision of 10-2 after 3 days of deliberations. Vincent Tabak was sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering Joanna Yeates. The judge ordered that he must spend at least 20 years in prison. Mr. Justice Field said Tabak, who was flanked by 6 security guards in the dock, was guilty of an evil and wicked act and is a very dangerous individual. The jury did not hear during the trial that when police delved into Tabak's computers after his arrest, they discovered an interest in hardcore pornography, some of which featured strangulation and bondage. He accessed a portal to a pornographic site on the day he killed Joanna. Following the killing, he sometimes navigated between reports about her disappearance and pornography. Police were particularly interested in an image on one of his computers showing a slight blonde woman resembling Joanna with her pink top pulled up. Police analysts also found that during business trips, Tabak researched escort agencies. While in Los Angeles, shortly before his attack on Joanna, police believe he may have twice used the services of a sex worker, once after checking into a hotel under a false name. The judge, Mr. Justice Field, ruled that the value of the evidence in explaining why Tabak acted as he did could not outweigh the prejudice it would cause his defence. After Tabak had appeared in the witness box and portrayed himself as a loving man devoted to his girlfriend Tanya, the prosecution argued that the jury had a right to be told about the evidence relating to the escort girls. The judge disagreed, and the jury did not hear the evidence. After the verdict, the judge told Tabak, "In my view, you are very dangerous. In my opinion, you are thoroughly deceitful, dishonest, and manipulative. When you entered her flat on the evening of the 17th of December last year, you did not even know her name and had had virtually nothing to do with her. You proceeded to strangle her, intending, in my judgment, to kill her. A dreadful, evil act committed against a vulnerable, unsuspecting young woman in her own home. That wicked act ended the life of a young woman who was entitled to expect a life of happiness and fulfillment." Joanna's parents were not in court to hear the verdict, but her boyfriend, Greg Reardon, stared at Tabak, visibly shaken and close to tears, as he was led away from the dock. In a statement from her parents read out by police outside a court, they said, "It is with regret that capital punishment is not an option." On the 29th of July 2011, 8 national newspapers were forced to make public apologies to Christopher Jeffries for the libelous allegations made against him following the murder of Joanna Yeates. The Sun, the Daily Mirror, the Sunday Mirror, Daily Record, Daily Mail, Daily Star, The Scotsman, and Daily Express also agreed to pay him substantial libel damages thought to be around 6 figures. The funeral of Joanna Yeates took place in St Mark's Church, Ampfield, on the 11th of February 2011. Joanna's body was carried into the church in a wicker coffin in front of her parents. The coffin was adorned with daffodils, small sunflowers, and assorted other spring flowers. A simple cross marked her grave. In 2016, the family revealed that they had found it too painful to lay a headstone. So that's it for this week. Please remember, if you enjoy the show or want to know more, follow us on Twitter at True Crime Fix Pod. That's at True Crime Fix Pod on Twitter, or look for our Facebook page, True Crime Fix Podcast. That's True Crime Fix Podcast on Facebook. I'll be posting information about this week's case on there. Also, there is a Facebook group, True Crime Fix Discussion, where we talk about the episodes and generally have a bit more fun there. I also have an Instagram account, so search True Crime Fix, but I'm being honest, I'm not really sure how to use it. Also, if you have any suggestions or feedback for the show, please contact me at truecrimefixpodcast@gmail.com. That's truecrimefixpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, stay safe, look after each other, and live life to the fullest, because you never know who or what might be coming around the next corner. Take care, everyone.